Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Monday live stream. We're trying to make sense of what's going on in the market. And we really have to talk about the things that we don't feel comfortable talking about, which is what is going on with the market and why is it such a laggard coming behind? And is it just all about momentum and sentiment? I think some of that part is yes. I think you can also use the other M word, manipulation. But in the grand scheme of things, some things are just off. And I had to ask the question today. This was on the X account. You actually are seeing this if you're here for the live stream. Or ask the simple question, which is for the next run up, because there's a run up at some point. It's not going to keep going down forever, just like nothing goes up forever. And the question was, are you going to start selling? Are you going to start taking profits? Are you going to hodl forever? Or are you going to sell everything that you have your hands on? Or are you going to sell all alts, excluding Bitcoin? And surprisingly, actually not surprising to me, it's like a 75-25 split where people are going to start to sell off some things. And if you've been around for quite some time, I don't blame you, especially with the nonsense that has been going on since October 10th of 2025. And we've just seen things just kind of slowly bleed down. Now, me personally, as everybody knows, I am short-term bearish, but I continue to buy Bitcoin. The thesis is I believe that the government, especially the American government, will continue to print money ad nauseum. And because of them debasing the currency, I believe there's another one to come around, that will be Bitcoin. So that is, I still see us going down further. I've said this for over a month now. I think we're going to have some problems, some issues. So if this is too much, I get why people want to sell, especially if we have like a little bit of a rally. But the question is why? Why is that, and what's going on behind the scenes? It is something that we really should, like I said, be talking about. And it's an odd thing because, I mean, S&P 500, NASDAQ, a lot of the AI companies, of course, gold, precious metals are crushing it right now. And they should be, because the global liquidity supply, and we've talked about this many times, M2 for global liquidity is an all-time high. M2 money supply for the United States is an all-time high. But we don't talk about the M1 money supply. Well, what is that? The M1 money supply is the most liquid of, as far as currencies go. This is like physical currencies, you know, like the dollar, the euro, the yen. I mean, the physical, actual paperback, cash is king, all that stuff. Coins and banknotes. These are the, of course, the most liquid to use. Checking accounts also is in there. And we can see here that China is massively printing funds, printing money. And that's right now is 37% of all M1 money supply. Now, of course, we have the G10, excluding the United States here, which is pretty stagnant, almost at all-time highs, but a little bit below. And the United States also above all-time highs, and they have 8 trillion or 18% of the M1 money supply. And look at China over there, almost at $45 trillion. So there's a lot of liquidity. This isn't a liquidity issue. If this is a liquidity issue, we'd have data to support that, but it's not it. And people keep saying that that's the problem. It's not the problem. It's a problem of where they're putting the actual funds. And we just stopped quantitative tightening. I believe we just put in another $10 billion that was put in by the Fed. So things are looking that way. I mean, and then also if we talk about, the banana zone, the ISM manufacturing PMI, we're still doing reasonably well as far as over time. It's not as good as we'd like it to be. The PMI, and if we're talking about, this is the manufacturing PMI for business cycles. This is like 11 to 13% of the U.S. economy, factories, productions, inventories, et cetera. And everybody wants it to be above 50 right now. Actually, right now, as far as the S&P flash U.S. manufacturing PMI, we're at 51.8, which a flash type of data point just kind of gives us like a down and dirty, like really quick one, but not a finalized. But at 51.8, I mean, that's better than what we were at 48.2 and 49 as far as manufacturing. Now, the other PMI is services, which is 70% of the U.S. economy, restaurants, healthcare, finance, tech, transportation, travel, consulting. So I know that there's the idea of the business cycles out there. Maybe this works out, but it's not like it's that awful. But really what it comes down to is the sentiment. And we can just see here that sentiment is, and I have a question for everybody, and please put this in the comments section or in the chats if you're live, or in the comments section below. Is it that bad? And I don't want to sound like I'm out of touch, like with saying like everything's great. It's not. There's some things that suck and it's awful, right? But is the sentiment that bad? And this is the sentiment indicator against the University of Michigan Current Economic Conditions Index. And we are at 50.4. How low is that? Well, that's the lowest that it's been going all the way back to, well, geez, 1970 or before. And this is when you had a negative sentiment of, what was that, 61, when the annual inflation rate in 1980 was 13.5%. Let's just think about that. Annual inflation rate is 13.5%. Things are getting inflated away. Now, they weren't money printing as much as there was. There wasn't a debasement of the currency as much as there was as it is now. But 13.5%, and we had Black Monday and everything else, sentiment seemed to be okay. 9/11, not too bad. I mean, 90 at that point. Again, this is just an assessment of economic conditions. This is, right now, we're lower than the Great Financial Crisis, 2007, 8, and 9. We are lower than COVID, which you can see right here how awful that is. And that was at 54, 55, somewhere around there. And we're at 50.4. So the sentiment is just so awful everywhere. And I just have to ask the question, I mean, is it the most awful that it's ever been in the last 45, 50 years? I don't think it's that bad. I think there's a lot of problems in there, but that's what we have. And then just to take a look at this, like, it's not just me saying this is the sentiment that it's bad, but it's all about what people are doing with their money. They're doing one of two things. One, they're putting into money market funds. This is from the Fed Reserve Bank of St. Louis. We can see here that the money market funds, or total financial assets in the United States, is at an all-time high. We're looking at roughly $7.5 trillion as of Q2 2025. Now, it's gone even higher than that, I'm sure. We'll get more data as time goes on. But people are just putting their money into money market accounts, getting 4.5% if they're lucky. And they're just kind of holding on to cash because they're unsure about what's going on. This could be a current presidential administration issue. This could be an issue with AI bubbles. This could be an issue with, we don't know what's going to happen with the next World War III. Take your pick. But the thing that we don't want to talk about is that the sentiment's low. We all know that. But the funds that are available out there and sloshing around, like we take a look at the M2 money supply, it's going into AI. We lost the momentum massively on October 10th. We were essentially moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, there was an issue with Binance and across the board as far as exchanges. Again, exchanges screw us again, just like they did in 2022. And it was their issue. Sorry, that's just my personal belief. And because of that and the massive liquidations, we lost so much momentum, it's very hard to get that back. Even though we have massive money supply, we have good liquidity, we have rates dropping, and everything else in between. And what does have the momentum is AI. And I know that most of you use it. I use it today. I use it for the thumbnail. I use it for the title. I use it for the research. Oh, and also, you can actually make your own GPT personal assistant, which I've been doing, and it gives me like personalized reports. So think about that when we're talking about like your altcoin, or not your altcoin, I'm sorry, altcoins in general, and how much they've actually delivered as to what they were saying. So anyhow, as far as AI, this is why I think that funds are going into it. Well, obviously, if we take a look at the S&P 500, it's mostly the big, large tech companies that are holding it afloat. But also there was two big individuals that invested heavily into AI. One, this was an old story. This is from November 17th. We talked about this a while back, where Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, they put a relatively large chunk down. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway revealed late Friday that it owns a $4.3 billion stake in Google parent Alphabet at the end of the third quarter. And if you know anything about Berkshire Hathaway, they don't really usually like to get in at the later parts or when things are going down. They like to invest into things that are going to appreciate. So they did that on November, And then also the greatest trader of all time, Nancy Pelosi, or Nancy Pelosi's husband, I don't know who it is. Nancy Pelosi, this is back in January. We should have been watching just her. Nancy Pelosi sells NVIDIA, Apple, and loads up on Google parent Alphabet and Amazon calls. This is where all the funds are going. You use it, I use it. The big people who know what's going on are betting heavily into it. And if we take a look at Google stock, well, Alphabet Class C, let's see. Nancy Pelosi got in January at $194. Congratulations, Nancy, if you're listening. And let's see. Warren Buffett got in at $291. So not too good for Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, but something to look at. And I think that's where the funds are going. Not all of it. But we have to remember that as the price action goes down and everybody's freaking out and fearful, which is normal, you know, at some point it will turn around. And we have to remember that there are big things happening in the crypto space. And I think there's some things that we should be aware of. One of those, if you're not into crypto anymore or digital assets, maybe just invest into Coinbase. Not financial advice, but Coinbase just acquired a prediction market, the clearing company. Deal follows Coinbase's recent rollout of prediction markets on its platform and expect to close in January, with the clearing company team joining Coinbase. So the whole thing with prediction markets is you'll know Polymarket and you'll know Kalshi. I personally prefer Kalshi because I can actually use it. Polymarket I can use just to take a look at it. I'm an American citizen, so I can't actually do any kind of well, we won't call it gambling, but to get into specific positions on Polymarket, I can't do it. And that's why I like Kalshi. But as far as like Coinbase, I don't know if you guys had heard about this. I think this has been over the different YouTube channels and on X. They just rolled this out last week. And Coinbase is going to be doing stock trading. So in tandem with everything that you can buy on Coinbase, this is not a advertisement for Coinbase. I'm not a big fan of the platform itself. They have a lot of problems as far as like with losing ID of the data of people who trade on it. But this is, I think, is a big thing for the normies: stock trading and tokenization. That's great. Prediction markets, we just talked about that. Futures and perpetual futures trading. So that's pretty big for the gamblers over there. And it's like they're kind of like eating everything alive. They're doing a Solana DEX trading. So again, my thesis as far as altcoins were very simple, which is we won't have the massive altcoin season where everything pops off. I think it'll just be a select few. And I have always said I think it's still going to be the best. Binance, Ethereum, Solana, and Tron. Solana looks like a partnership with Coinbase in the right direction. And then also Coinbase Business. No, that's not. I don't care about that. Coinbase Advisor. Speaking of AI, check this out. We believe the future of finance is automated, intelligent, and accessible to everyone. Today, we're taking a major step forward with Coinbase Advisor, our new AI-powered advisor for financial management, directly in the main Coinbase app. So imagine this. You're probably like asking AI essentially is like, hey, should I be taking profits at this point? And the advisor could say, well, because of your cost basis, you're at this, this, and this, and this will be your realized or unrealized gains or unrealized losses. And it kind of shift it and tell you what it is. Or you have a question like, hey, why is this pumping? Well, it's pumping because of that. I think it's a pretty good integration with Coinbase. That sounds pretty good. Also, speaking of Solana, I just want to give a shout out to them for, this was actually, I think another 4 or 5 days ago. Solana neutralized the 6 TBPS or DDoS attack, terabytes per second, using a specific traffic shaping protocol. And even I make fun of Solana on this channel because it's fun, and everybody talks about how, you know, it goes down at the slightest breeze. But actually, Solana has been pretty resilient and it's taken its lumps. And look, I'll tip my hat. If there was a DDoS attack and there was no issues like it states here, then that's good. Delivery network called Pipe Publishing put a recent barrage against Solana at roughly 6 terabytes per second. Solana's co-founders backed the broad thrust in public posts. Solana kept producing blocks, didn't go down. There was no coordinated restart or validator-wide group chat, turning into a late-night disaster, which is usually what happens with Solana. They'll actually go down, but didn't happen. And that was after an attack. Block production remained steady, and confirmations kept moving with no meaningful jump in user fees. So there is some good things that are going on in the market. I like to see what's going on with Coinbase, like they're moving forward. Solana is getting and shaking off their issue with it's going down and actually getting attacked and surviving that. So this is great. This is fantastic. However, there are some things that are good, such as this. Microstrategy just increased its dollar reserves or USD reserves by 740 million. Now holds roughly 2.2 billion. And that is to pay off shareholders for MicroStrategy, or excuse me, strategy stock. And that's a great thing. You know, you have $2.2 billion just sitting there. That means that they can last for decades if something happens. However, if you peek behind that just a little bit, how did that happen? Well, this is from the SEC, Form 8K. And what it essentially says is what they did was an ATM, a stock at the moment or at the market. And what they did is they created new shares and they sent those off and they were bought up by individuals, which you think, well, that's fine. You can just create new shares and get a bunch of money in, $740 million, something like that. That's great, but now you got more people with more shares. That's a little dilution of the people who own the stocks of strategy. And they have these new shares that are out there like, hey, what happened? You just pretty much debased our stocks. Now I know that's a very simplified version of it. And people will say, well, that's what they had to do. And that's true, that's what they have to do. And I think if anything's gonna happen, we have to watch this, because with the MSCI coming through and them delisting strategy, looks like that could actually hurt the company. And that's not me saying that. That is the open letter from Michael Saylor to MSCI saying, don't delist us, because if you do, there's a massive amount of selling. They can stay ahead of it, but they just had to dilute their stock. Anyhow, let me just think about all that in the comment section. That's it for today. So I just want to give you like a little bit of a balanced version and just talk about what it is that's going on. I think there's enough liquidity. I think there's not massive issues in the background. I just think the sentiment is awful. And I think maybe there's something going on in the background that is delaying this progress. You can figure out what that potentially is, but that's where we're at. So that's it for today. Like today's video, thumbs up, subscribe, all that great stuff. Now, if you want to stick around, I'll do my best. We'll do a little Q&A and go from there. Let's see. Tom Lee, hold on. Tom Lee says University of Michigan survey is now rigged, 65% Democrat, 35% Republican. Well, that would make sense then. I remember this, 1975. I remember this discussion he talked about the University of Michigan sentiment indicator. And he talked, the reason why the sentiment is so low is just like what you said, 65% Democrat, 35% Republican. And that was my kind of thesis as I was thinking about it. I'm like, is it really that bad? You know, if you are not a fan of the current presidential administration, it is that bad. It's like the worst thing of all time. And that's the thing that sucks about the current administration. You know, if you do something good, it's awful. If you do something bad, it's a catastrophe. So this is just sentiment. This is people flipping out. And that's why you have the money market as it is. And people are holding on to it because they expect a collapse. Maybe that collapse isn't coming. Maybe that's just something in their head. Or maybe it's the truth. Not for me to say. It's for me to bet against the people that are crazy and just say, well, I think in the long run it'll be fine. And that could be the whole issue. All right. Apple Monday, Crypto Life. Yes, good Monday. Master Blaster is here. I think the new SEC chair that Trump will nominate, which is a pro-crypto guy, will be a positive force in the market in 2026. That's true. That's not going to be until, gosh, you have to get nominated, then you have to go through the Senate hearings to make sure that you actually get the job. So you're looking at maybe May, June. And you have to be confirmed. That's what it is. So that's a ways away. And then also I just read from, I think it was the St. Louis Fed governor talked about how they wouldn't want to, they don't want to raise rates anymore. But that was just one individual. So it's a whole group of people. Ryan Tex says, my shorts were filled earlier and I was made to get off the bus. Good stuff. Let's see. Jupiter says, you'll see a big Bitcoin buy from Microstrategy next Monday to get their Bitcoin yield 25%. Their target. I'd like to see that. But it's, it's amazing. Like they just bought roughly $1 billion with a B. Gosh, what was it, 7-8 days ago? Didn't seem to move the market one way or the other. But you will notice, isn't it interesting how like, at first it was 93K, and then it would drop to 90K, then 92.5K, then 90, then 93, and then 90. And now it seems like everything is range bound between like 88 and 90. And that's where we're stuck. I don't know if that's just the natural markets and the flows, or if that's something else going on. Or if Wall Street wins again, like Claude says. Yeah. Bottom for Sol is 96 to 106, which is better than the previous low, which was $9. Those are good days. Joseph says, if Sol goes to 20 bucks, like they said on Coin Bureau, we'll just break me emotionally. For as much as people complain about Solana and everything else and how it's not decentralized, it is centralized. That's true. I mean, it's not as decentralized as Bitcoin. That's just the facts. However, if you want something that is cheap and has been around for a while and can actually shake off DDoS attacks, I'm not saying that yours can't. And also, has been picked up by Tether and USDC as far as like with stable coins, and they're using it as the top 4 chain. Maybe 20 bucks isn't so awful. I don't know. I was just, as I was saying that, the words came out of my mouth. I remember being here in 2018 and hearing the same things from YouTubers and getting so angry because I was like, who the hell are these guys to just want the price to go down? This makes no sense. Are they moronic? And now as time has gone on, since I've been here since 2017, I realized that they all knew the same thing that I know now. And I think most of you know in the comments section, which is nothing goes down forever. There's some that are not going to make it back, and that's just how it is. I mean, does anybody remember BitConnect? Yeah, exactly. Does anybody remember FeFi FOFUM crypto? Exactly. Nobody does. IOTA, which seems to be a decent one, but no one really talks about anymore. It's a whole litany of things. But as time has gone on, I just realized that, the safest bet would have been Bitcoin. Second safest bet would have been Ethereum. I remember buying Ethereum at 150 bucks. It was crazy. Bitcoin at 8,500, then 5,000, then, well, I never got 3,500, but I remember around 5,000. Should have just done that. Just stuck around. Let's see. Master Blaster says, Peter Schiff sure is running his gums the past 2 weeks. As well he should. Congratulations to gold bugs and silver bugs and everybody else, because they're the winners. They did a great job of holding for the longest time. And because of the central banks, and mostly China, which is really trying to get off the dollar standard. I mean, really trying to get off of it. They've been stockpiling gold like crazy. Now, it could have gone either way. As far as like, do we want Bitcoin to stockpile that or gold? And they're like, we're going to choose gold. I think one of the reasons, and this is just me hypothesizing, is that, it's electrical demands of Bitcoin, or power demands, are pretty high. And if you have seen the amount of electricity consumption and then the building of their infrastructure, to go from, it doesn't matter if it's solar or nuclear or hydro or oil or gas, they've essentially blown the United States out of the water. And I think the reason why they wanted to create so much electricity is because they want to win the AI race. And to do that, you need a boatload of power. So maybe they were looking at it and going, well, we could choose Bitcoin, but that's a lot of power to compete. Or maybe they just didn't want to do it and they just went with gold. That's what it was. So could have gone either way, but it looks like gold's the winner on this one for now. So we'll see. And yeah, China has Bitcoin, but it doesn't seem like they really want to go forward with it. I think you would think they would. I mean, America comes out and says, hey, we want to be at the forefront of AI. They want AI to be the next big thing, so they compete with us. American government comes out and says, hey, we want to be the Bitcoin capital of the world. You would think they would say, oh, you want to be the Bitcoin capital? The whole game theory was they would come behind China and say, yeah, let's do that. Doesn't seem to be the case. And also, I believe not that they banned Bitcoin, but didn't they shut down a bunch of miners in a lot of provinces? I mean, other ones will pop back up, that's true, but they're actively going against it, so yeah. Joseph says, yeah, Rob, all the silver I bought 15 years ago is finally in profit. I'm finally happy, but not old. But now I'm old. Yeah. Let's see. Sorbinger says, it's weird because the US holds a lot of gold. Yeah, pretty sure the most. You got to offset that, I guess. If they want to get off the dollar standard, they're going to have to own a lot of it and buy it up as over time. But if you've seen it, it's like it goes straight vertical. I think that's it. Okay. Last one. This is interesting. 2026 might see gold up to 10K. The BRICS own 20% of all gold. And with the currency of the unit coming out, the DXY will no longer be the reserve currency. Wouldn't that be something? People are flocking into these money markets and holding the dollar. And what if the Dixie just collapses and the dollar isn't worth anything? That's the real story. And if that's the case, then what would you want to own? Me personally, gold, silver, Bitcoin might not be a bad option. Anyhow, that's up for you to decide. Anyhow, that's it for today. Thanks much, everybody, for stopping by. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys on the next one. Adios.